All right, welcome back to the show, New Legend Podcast, where we celebrate vintage 4x4s, family culture, adventure, and being a man in the 21st century. And for the first time,
yay!
We don't have a male guest. We have we're here with Brittany from Cummins. What's up?
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. So, Brittany, we've known each other probably for 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you work for Cummins.
Yep.
Very large company. How many employees does Cummins have?
It's a terrible question. It's a good question.
I think it's
it's like a lot of thousands.
Yeah, I thought I heard
tens of thousands, 50,000. I should know the answer to that.
I thought I heard like 15,000.
Yeah, it's a lot. A lot of people all over the world. So not just necessarily here, but yeah, very global, very large company.
Crazy. So we're going to talk about two things, and we'll kind of blend these two topics together. But for those of you guys that have listened to the show and have paid attention a little bit to kind of car culture, and particularly the 4x4 off-road world, the Cummins R2.8 has made a pretty big splash on the industry, and is pretty I think it's kind of a game changer kind of thing for the aftermarket, because isn't it this is one of the first official diesel turnkey crate motors? Yeah,
so this is the first brand new from the OEM diesel crate engine on the market. There has always been obviously a lot of junkyard, swaps. Yes. People use, Cummins engines that they pull from various different chassis that we've sold them into, but this is the first diesel engine that comes straight from the factory, straight from us, and like you said, it's kind of a turnkey package, so we do all the engineering for you. Yes. And it comes as one complete kit, which
we'll talk about, but that's where probably the magic and the challenges, because you could just create, you've sold 5.9s for a while, right? Mm-hmm. Just a replacement engine.
Yeah, so we actually, surprisingly, the 5.9, we actually just launched the recon version. So what we do is actually take in core of the 5.9 engines from the Ram trucks and rebuild them like new. So it reuses the block and some of the the major components. So most of it is we take all the components in as core.
But they're built by the factory. Cummins. That's cool.
We rebuild them, and those are mostly sold as service replacements. So that's for warranty replacements, or just service replacements when your engine wears out down the road. They're intended to be put back in Ram trucks that had the engines originally. Right. So we do that with almost all Cummins engines. We offer recon versions, especially
same with the semis. I know my friend owns a pretty big trucking company.
Yeah, so all of the big truck engines, especially once they go out of production for new engines, we obviously have to service those trucks long term. So we offer recon engines. Yep. And so we do that now for the 5.9 and the Ram trucks as well. And so
and that's got to be quite a bit easier than making, because when you, and we're getting ahead of ourselves, so we'll back up. But when you offer someone a turnkey crate engine, they expect it to be hook up this wire, hook up this fuel line, and turn the key, and it magically works.
And that's what we wanted for the R2.8. Everyone was used to pulling the mechanical 5.9s or the mechanical the beef 4BTs. Sorry, my train of thought. Yep. They're used to pulling those out, and those are mechanical engines, so it's a 1-wire, 2-wire thing, and then you hook them up. And so we wanted this to be as similar to that as we could, even though it's an electronic engine. And so we've done all the work on the computer and the wiring harness, and so we give you those handful of wires and say, hey, plug this in here, plug this in here. Yes. And we control the rest, so you're not having to mess with creating wiring harnesses or calibrating anything. So it's all there for you.
So how did the let's kind of, while we're on that topic, I want to talk about two main things. How kind of you got connected into Cummins. Well, how you got, what was the pathway in your life that led to getting a job at Cummins?
Sure.
Number one, did you grow up just passionate about diesel engines? And number two, let's talk about how the R2.8, whole program came about. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and I think that, that'll flow well, I think. So So I got involved at Cummins, even back in high school. I wouldn't say I was a diesel fanatic, but I definitely was involved. I was really interested in, automotive, not necessarily engineering, but I worked at a mechanic shop doing oil changes and tire swaps. And
how did that come to be? Because that's not a traditional path for a lot of young ladies.
Yeah, so it was kind of right around the time where I was trying to think about what I wanted to do for college. So I was a junior or senior in high school. And I had always really been good at math and science, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I actually thought for a little while I wanted to be like an astronaut, and so I had been looking at like aerospace engineering and that kind of thing. But at the time, there really wasn't like a whole lot going on in that industry, and I didn't really figure it would be a good career path. And so I kind of switched gears to automotive, which had always kind of interested me, but I just really didn't have experience with it. I did not really grow up as like a gearhead. My dad is not that person that's super hands-on. He's always, tinkered here and there, but, I didn't grow up in the garage. I didn't grow up kind of in that environment. And so I figured, hey, what better way to, learn about it is to just immerse myself, just like I said, changing oil and watching what goes on at a mechanic shop. And so I actually volunteered my time at just like one of our local shops. Cool. So I worked there for about a year just to kind of get my hands wet and see what was going on, and decided that I liked it. So went to college for mechanical engineering in upstate New York at Rochester Institute of Technology, from? Vermont.
Okay, wow.
So East Coast.
Classic.
And there's no engineering in Vermont. Right. So like I think now our high school offers engineering classes and stuff, but at the time it was a very liberal arts-based high school, and so there wasn't a whole lot of engineers that came out of it. So I went to college for engineering. We had a concentration in the automotive options, so it was a 5-year degree, and so my last year kind of all focused on automotive engineering and internal combustion engines and that kind of stuff.
But not, like, even at that point, was it specifically diesel?
Nope, and at that point, actually, I was kind of more interested in kind of alternative fuels.
Interesting.
In the automotive space, and so I had done some internships working on, a new process to distill ethanol. We were working with biodiesel in one of the dynos that we had there. We were working on hydrogen fuel cell technology and actually hydrogen internal combustion engines. So I did a bunch of kind of
Did those have a bright future?
Hydrogen combustion engines, I haven't heard anything about them, honestly, since that project that I was working on. I think hydrogen fuel cells, Cummins is actually getting into that technology. They did a big thing, I think it was yesterday or the day before, talking about hydrogen fuel cell technology and how we're incorporating that at Cummins. So I think that's got it going for it. And I think, hydrogen as a fuel is great. It's basically no emission.
Right.
You just have to work on kind of the safety of storing it. But at the same time, gasoline isn't a super safe fuel anyway. Everyone has just kind of accepted that it's okay. And so I think once hydrogen kind of gets that far, it'll be a decent fuel as well. But anyway.
Earmark that. Because later I want to talk about the future of diesel and Cummins' perspective on that. So
so that's kind of what I was interested in. And I had, seen some stuff where, I think diesel engines, just from like a robustness standpoint, there you can start running biodiesel in them. You can start running, straight, veggie oil in them. Basically, you can do a lot with like additives to make them, make more power or run more, efficiently or cleaner. So. They were more interesting than like gasoline engines just from that perspective of like the potential of what they could do. I think, clean diesel technology is, just as good as gasoline technology. I think diesel gets a bad rap for, being dirty, but I think you can do a lot with it. And so I kind of started, looking in that space and ended up getting a job at Cummins out of school because there is a Cummins facility up in upstate New York, and so they just kind of recruit from our school. And ended up just getting the job here in Indiana instead of in upstate New York, which I like because there's a lot of snow up there. But I actually started, the first job I had was on our 95 liter engine, so not automotive at all. It's the largest engine that Cummins makes.
Yeah, 95 liters?
Yeah, so I mean, it's like the size of half the room that we're in right now.
What is it, like locomotive or?
Locomotive, marine, a lot of power generation.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool project to be involved with. I mean, it was the very beginning when Cummins was working on that. Like I said, it is the largest engine that we make. So it was a very kind of innovative project that Cummins threw a lot of money at, and so there was a lot of engineers working on it. So it was a really
still going strong today.
Still going strong. Yep.
Yeah, awesome.
So it's in production now. They actually like redid the whole plant down in Seymour, Indiana, to be able to build that down there.
And forgive the dumb question, but is it literally just like? Because I'm not an engineer at all, but I know there's like engineering laws that like if it works at a small scale, like if you have a 1 liter. The engineering doesn't work to just scale it to 95 liters, all things being the same as the 1 liter. So does it just have like giant pistons?
Yeah, I mean it's just basically a big engine. So it's a V16. So it's like a V8, but just with 16 cylinders instead
What's
of
the
8.
engine outside of the Cummins, like in Columbus? It's outside. There's like a big old engine.
It's like
but it's probably not that big. It's probably the one you're working on is way bigger.
Yes. It would take up like a whole courtyard versus just on that stand.
Yeah.
What is that? I think it's like a 9 liter or an 11 liter or something that's out there. So it was a really cool project to work on, but like I said, I was kind of more interested in automotive stuff, and so it wasn't for me in the long run to work on that. And so a job opened up in our vehicle integration team, working on pickup trucks. And so I kind of jumped on that. I said, that's more what I want to do. Because not only is it, engine based, it's also vehicle based, and there's not a whole lot of opportunity to do that at Cummins because we obviously just make engines.
Right.
And so on the vehicle integration team, I actually got to deal with transmissions and vehicle integration. So we were looking at rear axle ratios and how you kind of incorporate all of that together to really optimize the way your engine runs. Because I think what people don't really realize is, your engine can only do so much, and so much about the way your vehicle drives is actually transmission and axle ratios and suspension, and all of that plays into the fuel economy and the drivability. And so we really worked on all of that, and so we worked with the engine performance team to kind of dial in stuff on the engine, but I was also working with the transmission suppliers and the vehicle builders to to really put together a good package.
And that's like interesting because that's OEs, right? So like Nissan or so that's OEs going, not only we are definitely putting this Cummins engine in, but it's like, is it like kind of like testing too?
So we did a lot of like demo vehicles as part of our group. So we worked with Ram, we worked with Nissan, and then also the group I did was the commercial version of the 5 liter as well. So that goes in like UPS vans and motorhomes and school buses, those kind of platforms. And so we worked with all those kind of OEMs to do demonstrations for hey, if you put this powertrain or this drivetrain behind the engine, or this drivetrain behind the engine, you can do different things with different transmissions and different setups. And so that's a lot of what that group did was like you said, kind of demos to the OEMs to try to sell them different engine packages or platforms. So it was a really fun group to be involved in.
Real quick, so that I know like the Nissan Titan came with a Cummins 5.0 still, or
so they actually just ended that offering. So it was available for about 5 years. But so it came with the 5 liter, and so that's basically the group that I was working on during that time period. Did the
5.0 ever go into a domestic truck?
No. So it was originally, way back in the day, that 5 liter was it was a partnership between Ram and Nissan, actually. They wanted to kind of get together and get a smaller diesel engine that in theory Ram was going to put in their 1500s and Nissan was going to use in their trucks. And originally the engine was actually a V6. It looked a lot different.
Interesting.
And then in 2008, when the economic recession hit, I think Ram, kind of changed gears. They were, all of Chrysler was bought out by Fiat, and Fiat had their own, diesel engines of that size, and so they kind of shifted gears, and so now that eco diesel is in the Ram 1500.
Got it.
And that's when the 5 liter kind of became the 5 liter that it is today, and it switched from a V6 to a V8, and Nissan kind of changed their truck so that it would all be a little bit different. So that's kind of how that all came to be. But so while I was working on that group, a guy named Steve Sanders approached me, and he said, "Hey, I'm working with Fred Williams on this Mad Max car."
Really, that was the first one.
That's kind of how this all morphed into the Repower project. And so he said, I told him we could get this 5 liter and put it in this Mad Max car, and we're going to put a GM Allison transmission behind it, and we're going to make this cool off-road car. But it wasn't as easy as they were thinking it was going to be, because it wasn't a crate engine. It wasn't turnkey, and so that engine was looking for all the OEM things that it no longer had installed in this Plymouth Roadrunner. And so that's kind of how I got involved, was to try to make the engine talk to the transmission and get all the things that it needed so that it would run properly, and kind of be that vehicle integration engineer for their project.
Wow.
And so
this is before. So was the R2.8?
Nope. So like the R2.8 was not even a thing yet.
What was Steve's role at the time? So Steve Sanders, like, you've seen him in some of our videos, and he's a friend and a cool guy, and so he won't be foreign to some of our.
So Steve's gonna play a pivotal role in this story. Yeah. But at the time he was kind of the marketing communications person, I don't know what their job title is, for the Nissan account and our pickup trucks. And so he was kind of directly involved with all the 5 liter marketing, and so that's kind of how he was like, get this 5 liter and put it on dirt every day with Fred, and it's a good kind of marketing gimmick. And it was right when we were launching the 5 liter with Nissan, so it was like all right around the same time where there was a lot of headlines with this 5 liter. And so we actually went out to SEMA, because that Mad Max car was supposed to be out in the Maxxis booth at SEMA that year, and they hadn't quite got it running yet. So that's when I went out there and tried to start helping. And that was
out to Fred's place.
Out to SEMA, actually. We were in the parking lot at SEMA trying to make that car run so we could get it inside at SEMA.
Isn't that funny?
SEMA builds are always interesting. We actually went to Fred's place later and worked on it a little bit more, but the SEMA part was important, because that was the SEMA where we had half of a Jeep with a 2.8 liter engine in it, and then a couple other engines kind of sitting on the floor of our SEMA booth, and we were taking kind of surveys and saying, hey, would you buy a crate engine from Cummins if we had one, and what would you put it in, and what size would you want it to be, and what are the things that you're looking for? And we surveyed a couple thousand people over the course of that SEMA, and the weeks kind of before and after it. And that was really the start of the discussion of the crate engine program. And so we spent basically the next year building the business case within Cummins of saying, okay, here are all our survey results. This is what people want. I mean, they want a Cummins crate engine because they love Cummins. And that was like our main feedback that we got, is they were like, we don't even care what it is. Like, we love Cummins. We want to be able to put a Cummins in our vehicles. And then so the next thing people wanted was the durability and the fuel economy, and they started talking about what vehicles they wanted to put them in, and it was a lot of Jeeps and Toyotas and Land Rovers. This was 2015.
So at this time, like JKs were out for a while, but TJs were like needing new engines, so like they're getting high miles.
So YJs. This was JK's had been out there for about 8 years, 9 years at that point. But the TJs were getting up there, and obviously there's older vehicles that definitely need new engines, and so those were kind of the majority of the responses we got were like that size of vehicle. Right. And so
because the 5.0 was on the table, right? As like part of the questionnaire, like, do you want a 5.0?
Yeah,
do you want
and we never said like, do you want this engine or this engine? But we were trying to say like, what platforms of vehicles, were you interested in? Like, do you want a 4-cylinder? Do you want a V8? Like, we didn't say like this V8 or this 4-cylinder, but just like trying to get an idea of what people wanted. And based on the survey results, I think that the 2.8 was the most logical to at least start with, because I think it comes in at the cheapest price point because it's the smallest one. So, you're going to have the most people be able to afford to use it, and it was going to fit in the most vehicle platforms. And so it just kind of seemed like the right one to start with.
And it had so the 2.8 at this point was already an engine that Cummins was dealing with.
Yeah, so it was a platform at that time that had been in production for about 6 or 7 years.
Wow. Okay.
And it's used like I said, we're a global company. We've got employees everywhere. And so it's used mostly in Asia, so China, Russia, kind of that side of the world. It's used a lot in Australia. We sell them down in South America. We basically sell them everywhere except for in vehicles on road.
Awesome.
We do use them in the U.S. here in like forklifts and kind of machinery and stuff like that. They're not automotive here in the U.S., but they're automotive basically everywhere else.
Cool.
And they're actually used in a lot of more kind of heavy duty applications overseas too. So like cab over trucks and stuff like that also get this engine. So it's a platform that we were very familiar with. And
was it a replacement, like supposed to be a replacement for the 4BT?
Yes and no. I mean, we still sell variants of the 4BT as like new engines. So that one's, been modernized into, new engines as well. And so
is it still called a 4BT?
Probably like outside Cummins. Cummins doesn't really use that designation. So, but we've got, 3.9s and 4.5s. And so those are kind of the grown up version of the 4BT. And so those still all exist.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it was a replacement for that, but it's a fit for market engine that, like I said, has been used all over the world just because it does have that, Cummins reliability and durability, but it's a little bit smaller. Overseas, people don't buy huge pickup trucks, and it is not the same as the American market when it comes to automotive, cars and engines and trucks. And so, the little like utes that they call them. I mean, that's what this engine was designed for. Was for stuff like that. And
so you're chilling along. So while you're making this kind of internal pitch to Cummins, you're still doing your other job. Steve's still doing his job.
Yeah, so Steve's still doing his marketing for Nissan, and I'm still doing my vehicle integration for pickup trucks.
But you guys kept in like the dream, like we were working on it together.
Yeah. Cool. So the two of us were kind of, like I said, kind of building that business case and figuring out how we can, explain to Cummins who, big Cummins really didn't understand what a crate engine is. There's lots of people there that are like, I don't understand why you would take your engine out of the vehicle.
Because their mindset is very specifically OEs.
Yes, first fit OE, like you design an engine for, the truck is going to go in, and why would you ever take it out or, replace it with something else? Like
so not like hot, which is interesting. What you'll hear probably before this episode is the history of Cummins. And the history of Cummins is kind of rife with a hot rodders mentality of like sticking taking it out of this.
Repower has always been the thing. Yeah, from the very get-go. I mean, that's how Classy Cummins pitched, the idea of a Cummins diesel engine in the first place is he, repowered old vehicles or at the time, regular vehicles. With Cummins engines to demonstrate them. And so, I think Cummins has kind of lost that within the last couple of years and just
meaning
becoming that global 80? Company. And in the last 80 years. But just becoming such a big company and being so corporate. I mean, it's great for the company, but you do lose some of that kind of that fun hot rod mentality. And so the Repower program was really our pitch to get some of that back. We kind of built that business case for at least a year within Cummins while we were working our regular jobs. And then even once we kind of were given the green light to go ahead and we announced at SEMA that next year, so 2016, we spent then the year, after that actually making it a reality from like the technical side and supply chain and really figuring out, okay, we've got this engine that we already make, but how do you make it that turnkey package? So we spent that year making the turnkey package. We did our whole calibration for this is unique to the crate engine, so we did all the work on the calibration. We did all of our emissions testing. We built our wiring harnesses. We released all our parts that go in the kit. So we did all that work while we still had our other jobs. The whole group that worked on the Repower program, I mean, the whole thing has been like in your spare time.
Yeah. Which makes it like a passion project.
Yeah,
which
so
makes
it's good because everyone that works on it wants to be working on it. You have a team of dedicated people that really care about it because they're all doing this in addition to their day jobs. And so we spent about a year kind of getting it all ready. So in 2017 is when we actually launched it and put it in production. And I know you got one of the kind of beta engines. You were actually the first person to start their beta R2.8
really
engine
fun.
In your Scout.
And what's cool is I'm trying to remember how I met Steve. I don't remember.
I don't know how you got on that list, but you got the first one.
Yeah, he's a very like charismatic guy, and like we just hit it off instantly. It was, and I don't know if it was, I can't remember, but I think that's exciting to know that we were the first. We were excited, and that's one been like my guys, like our team sees this as it can be a negative and a positive. That like for my whole business life, I've been like, hey, can you put this 440 in a Scout? Like, sure, I could do it. Or can you put this Navistar 4.5 liter V6 twin turbo diesel in? Like, sure. And then it's a nightmare, as you can probably appreciate. But yeah, when the opportunity came for the R2.8, I think there was also a little internal perfect storm for us of good things, and that was meeting Steve, going like, hey, here's this potential, because we always are up for embracing modern technologies to make old vintage 4x4s, particularly Scouts, more efficient, just the driver experience to be better. And I'm not like I'm not a diesel guy, so I think the turnkey aspect was really attractive to me. But I'm trying to think. So, and then it was a perfect timing of a customer who was like,
wanted to try it.
And so props to this guy Dave, who said like, heck yeah, let's do it. And we had this Legend series, which is one of our like kind of top model Scout. And the Scout is still to this day a really rad Scout. So
awesome.
We met. That's how I met you, because you had to install like a data logger. And
I updated your calibration. Like I said, you were like the very first one that got their engine and got it done, and we met out at Overland Expo West out in Flagstaff.
So that would have been 2017, right?
West would have been spring of 2018.
2018,
yeah,
okay.
Because we first, I think you got your engine in the spring of 2017.
Okay.
We started selling production engines or did you really get it done? No. Yeah, I don't know if it was 2017 or 2018 that we would have met, but it might have been 2017.
I thought it was 2017. Because
you got yours early, so it might have been 2017.
But I remember that first drive with the data logger installed. Like, okay, man, this is sweet. And like, just a little feedback. Probably the thing I've always appreciated most about the R2.8 program, and Cummins, if anyone from Cummins is listening, this is important, is like you guys really cared about us and about the I could tell that you guys cared, and it would be 10 o'clock at night and I would text Steve, or then he would text you or whatever, and we would get answers. And honestly, that was whatever, let's say it was 4 years ago, that hasn't changed. Like, you guys are still available, accessible, and so that gives a company like ours a lot of confidence in the product, that it's not just like, buy our crate engine, we don't care about you. So that's been a consistent experience. So kudos to you guys for being those kind of people that believe in what you're doing, and I think Cummins is lucky to have people like that.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we've always tried to be conscious, at least me and Steve, of we work for this big company that typically is your 9-to-5 job, but that's not what you guys live and work. And most of our customers are not doing this because this is their job. Everyone else that comes, they get to work with the Nissans and the Rams and the OEs who they're at their 9-to-5 job too.
Right.
But like I said, that's not what you guys are doing, and so all of our customers are either individual people that are working on this at night after they come home from work, or this is your livelihood and you don't get to quit at 5.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make sure that we were available to you guys and kind of make your experience good, because that's going to be what makes our program a success.
Yes. And so did you guys, because there's two questions that come to mind. Number one is shops. Like, was there a strategy behind the early adopters being shops versus like just rando people? Number one. Number two, how important was it to stoke the aftermarket? Because I know, like, if it wasn't for, I think Kevin was early on. Okay, so Kevin was helping you with the early on.
Yeah, so at the time, I think it was even before Axis kind of was formed. There was a company called Rapid Engineering.
Okay.
And they're actually a local company here in Indiana, and they helped us install the first 2.8 in our black Jeep that we've been using as our test vehicle. So there was 4 guys out at Rapid that kind of formed Axis as kind of like a sister company to really focus on the R2.8 swaps and parts and that kind of stuff. And so then ultimately Kevin ended up buying them out, and so now that's the Axis of today, and Kevin that owns it and runs it.
Was that TJ? So you said, was that up and running before we had ours up and running?
Okay, yes, technically that one was up and running.
That's the first outside of Cummins.
Yes. So you were the first like beta customer that had the engine running of like, so we had our black Jeep that they did kind of first to help us even like develop that calibration. So that was done like a year in advance, back in the time where we were making the wiring harness and building the calibration. It's got
to be a proud moment of like seeing your work.
It was actually kind of funny because we like got the engine all running. I went up to Rapid and we cranked it over. We got it running. We went for our first test drive. We came back and it puked all the coolant out all over the ground because they like didn't have like one of the coolant tubes, like the bead rolled on it, and so when it heat soaked, it spilled. We're like, "Oh, that's kind of a letdown." But yeah, I mean, it fired right up, and we got to drive it around, so it was super exciting.
That's cool.
But yeah, so kind of back to how we selected the 25 beta customers. We really wanted, like you said, kind of to stoke the aftermarket and to kind of build up these, shops that were going to either offer swaps or parts or kits or whatever it was, because we knew, this is a new platform that there's nothing out there in the aftermarket for. And if we just say, hey, Joe Schmo in your garage, try to put this in, like he's never going to be successful, and that's not going to be a good experience for anybody. Because it is a turnkey kit, but it still needs all the like vehicle side things. You still need a cooling package, you still need engine mounts, you still need transmission. So you still need all that stuff, and that's not stuff that we're providing. And so we really needed to set up the aftermarket to be able to support the platform. So those 25 beta customers were shops like you guys that seem to have a good following and good background technical knowledge and the ability to install engines, not just swap on lights and bumpers and that kind of stuff. And so we wanted to find people that were going to be successful at this, but that were also going to provide some benefit to the aftermarket. And so some of them went purely to companies that were going to sell parts and kits and components, and some went to shops that were going to do swaps themselves. And so that's kind of how we picked all of those customers. But I think and the builders have continued to be an important part of the program. And I think, we've always wanted to do better for our builders, and that's still a goal of the program going forward, is to support you guys better than we are, and to keep that being important, because I think that's where we really see a lot of kind of the organic growth of our program, is word of mouth from you guys talking to your customers and you having good experiences with it and being able to sell it for us. And so that continues to be really important to us.
Because shops they have such a, and it's a responsibility that I take seriously, is people listen. Like when we've done over 100 conversions, not just all Cummins, but our Cummins numbers are growing because we believe in the product, and like the more testing and you guys have so let's talk about this. From those early days of data logging, what was the process like of making refinements? Because you've made a couple tunes, you've had to fight. Steve is a funny dude, because he's always not an off the record kind of guy, but like the mysterious 2.4 tune, like, 200 horsepower. It's like, we could do that, man.
Steve likes to overpromise and underdeliver. He's a marketing guy through and through. So he knows that if he promises something to everyone else, then they come to ask me on the technical side, like, hey, this is what we want. Now you have to make it happen. So
that's got to be a funny relationship.
I'm the pessimist to Steve's optimist for sure, which makes us work well together because he kind of pushes me out of my comfort zone and makes me try stuff, that I could just let it be, and I kind of bring him back to reality sometimes that says, okay, like, that could work in your world, but like in the Cummins world, that's not going to happen.
Right.
But so we have made a lot of kind of refinements and improvements since we started with the engine that you got. Even when you got yours, I mean, it wasn't even, the final calibration that we released to the public when we first put them on sale. So you had kind of the beta version.
I think he's did it like a live stream.
Yes, we had to log in over the internet and up
to the data logger, which is still in the truck.
Yeah, we still haven't gotten that one back yet.
I don't know where the truck is.
We found it, and we talked to the guy every once in a while trying to get him to give our data logger back, and he hasn't given it back yet. So I'm sure I'm getting charged by Cummins for that. But,
yeah, exactly.
So we were able to log in over the internet through that data logger and send updates to the engine computer. But the big improvement that we made was just increasing the peak torque. So when we first sold the engines in production, what you got was 267 foot-pounds, and we were able to, from when we went in production, and then I guess it was another year later, we came out with that uprate of 307 foot-pounds.
Nice.
And that came along with some other just kind of drivability improvements. And again, kind of what people don't realize is, 307 foot-pounds, that sounds great on paper, but you're not driving around with 307 foot-pounds most of the time.
Right.
You're in the lower, end of the torque curve most of the time. And so we really focused a lot of our drivability improvements on oxygen fuel control and, different stuff like that can improve the drivability without, really changing the torque curve. So the torque curve did go up, but we made some other improvements that as a driver, you're going to feel those a lot more.
Yeah, I've noticed those changes. Like the latest ones, they just drive amazing. And I'd noticed an increase in power too. Just off the record, what is so we've done, I wrote down in my notes just the Wild West, because in this world it kind of the Fred Williams Max's that's a Wild West project. You don't know if it's going to work. You're trying to hack things and make things work. It's just kind of hot rod culture. But so we've tried, because there's other voices in the aftermarket that are like Steve, that are sure, throw this 8 HP 70 in there, or throw this in there. It's going to work great. And then it's up to the shop. Oftentimes it falls on the shops
to actually make that work.
To make it to go, okay, this doesn't work. Now we need to refine. And I know you guys have been a part of that with customers, but you guys go, this is beta. You're agreeing to, the terms of getting a beta motor.
Right.
So there's a lot of innovation, and think about for a second, the small block Chevy swapped into everything. And now the LS, there are literally millions of LS engines in the world, maybe lots of millions.
Yeah.
And in aftermarket, in vehicles they didn't come naturally with. So that's a huge aftermarket, and of time and numerical quantity of developing aftermarket support for that. So it is pretty, when you think about the Cummins R2.8 coming on the scene 4 years ago with zero aftermarket support to now, things are getting pretty good. There's multiple companies doing innovative things, and more than just innovative, proven.
It's actually, it's nice from my perspective because I can take a little bit of a step back. So at the beginning, when there wasn't a lot of that aftermarket support, we had to answer every single question.
Yes.
Anytime,
probably about like transmission tunes and
about everything. I mean, about everything. You know, what engine mounts am I supposed to use? What transmission do I put behind this? How do I tune it? What do I use here? What happens when I get this fault code?
Yeah.
And so we were answering every single question, and so it is kind of nice. Yeah, now that there are people out there with experience and that aftermarket support, because they can answer some of those questions. And sometimes they get them wrong, sometimes they get them right, but at least I'm not personally having to answer every single question.
Yep. So we found, just in general, our combo with the R2.8 is like we love it most with manual transmissions. Like we've done a 4L60, 6L80, 8HP70, I think a TR4050 5-speed and an AX15, and I don't think we did an NV 4500, but I'm sure people have done NV 4500s. The 8HP70, which is an 8-speed from Mopar.
Yep.
I don't know who manufactures it, but
ZF.
Yeah. That one has a ton of potential, and I think it's largely worked out. But again,
you guys got like the first one.
We were like one of the first ones. And I think, and our customer was awesome to go like open eyes, like, yeah, this is going to be some work, especially when you get into like these crazy computer controlled transmissions that are so.
But like you said, they have the potential to work really well and integrate really well, but you have to know, how to control them, how to tune them. Because like I said, the engine is only so much of your drivability.
That's
and
right.
Then there's so much drivability that is related to transmission. So if you don't get that right, it's not going to work.
That's right. And behind us, you have your third gen?
Second gen.
Second gen. Sorry, I'm not Toyota guy.
That's second gen 4.
And it's got an R2.8.
Yep.
And it's got an AX15. So was there like a decision process and like what you wanted to keep it a manual?
So it was a manual. It was a 5-speed behind the 3-liter Toyota engine, and when I bought it, it had just under 200,000 miles on it, and it was not drivable. I bought this whole truck for like $2,000, and like the clutch pedal would just like stick to the floor and wouldn't come back. So you'd be driving down the road and you'd be like, I can't shift because my clutch pedal's gone, and I had no power. That the transmission just grinded all the gears, and it was awful. But so I did want to keep it a manual because I do think it's the easiest way to go with one of these R2.8 swaps. Like you said, the 8 HP. Like if I had to pick an automatic, the 8 HP is what I would do. They drive amazing. But that's going to take a lot more money and a lot more time, and getting that all to fit in my second gen 4Runner. So we went with the AX15 kind of for multiple reasons. One being we had a new one, and it seemed silly not to use that when I had a new my transmission was shot. There was no using the Toyota transmission. There's a lot of aftermarket support for the AX15, coupled to the R2.8. So we had our pick of different adapters for it.
Yeah, what transfer case is it? The Toyota?
So that's the cool part about this is, so the AX15 is a Jeep transmission, and it is pretty much identical to the Toyota transmission that comes in this. They're both Eisen transmissions. The like the gear ratios and the internals are all the same. They just have different cases and different bolt pattern and stuff on either side. And so we actually took the AX15 and my Toyota transmission to a shop, like a transmission shop, and they took them apart and put the tail shaft housing from the Toyota on the AX15. And I think they had to bring 5th gear with it because of the way they're set up. So it's got actually the Toyota 5th gear, but the rest of the AX15.
So no adapter.
And so no adapter. So now I'm just running the stock Toyota transfer case.
Have other people done that since?
I haven't heard of anyone.
That's I love that.
We kind of talked about it. I have a forum post on the I Hate Mud, like Toyota forum. And so there was some kind of like back and forth of people talking about it. And that's kind of how I got the idea, was from that forum of, they were like, hey, I think they're, the same, or basically the same transmission. You can kind of put them together. But I don't know that anyone has specifically done that, for the R2.8, but it works, and so it's,
the AX15, even the ratios, it's just really perfect.
Really good. It's perfect.
I honestly like it better than the TR4050. It's purpose built. Like, you have to decide what you're doing. If you're kind of rock crawling or more like heavy off-road and or towing, I would go with the TR4050.
Yeah.
But
this is a great just like daily driver.
Dude, for sure.
I will say this setup, I'm trying to think what gearing I have in the back. It's like a 410.
It's a little.
Yeah. And so like highway cruising, I'm at like 2,800 RPM, which is pretty high, especially for like fuel economy. It's not super happy. But I don't do a whole lot of highway driving with it. Around here, my commute, I'm on the highway for about 4 miles.
Yep.
So it works, but.
Let's get into some of the specs of the R2.8. So what does, what cruise RPM does it like?
So I would say anywhere between like 22 to 2,400 RPM. 22 is obviously going to get you a little bit better fuel economy. 24 will get you a little bit better kind of peppiness if you're trying to pass on the highway or anything like that. We do have a gear ratio calculator on our website, which helps you kind of figure all that out when you're planning your build. And so it kind of lets you type in all your transmission ratios and tire size and all that and figure out exactly where you want to be. But that would be my recommendation, is somewhere between 22 and 2,400, especially if you're trying to drive it on the highway, often.
So if you undergear it, meaning, so if you're like 1,600 RPMs, this is kind of a technical question. If you're like lugging the engine, neither is good. Ideal is good. But if you had to go like your 2,800 or 1,500, which one is going to get you better gas? Because I've always been up to school like, you're better off to spin it a little faster than like super lug it down.
Yeah, this engine doesn't really like getting lugged down. I think like Ram trucks, they'll drive around at 1,100 RPM all day. Like you're not going to want to do this with this engine. So I would say err on the higher side than the lower side.
Yeah.
If you're at 2,000 or even 1,900, probably not bad. But I wouldn't,
a light truck. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go much below that for like a comfortable cruising highway speed, just because I think you're gonna struggle like passing people.
Yeah, you're always shifting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're gonna downshift a lot if you're
especially with a HB70, because I think they have a pretty aggressive overdrive ratio.
Yeah.
One thing that we've noticed is we've gotten outstanding performance from the R2.8, like 25, 26, 27 miles per gallon, like in a light early Scout. We have figured out that there are specific parameters that are important. Like on an LS, like you can go like, this intake placement will be okay, or they just have like they're a little more forgiving. That's a good word. But like we're developing our R2.8 Scout 2 kits through Anything Scout, which we're super pumped about because it's an awesome setup. Like it just fits right, feels right, sounds right. It's great. But like we've had to change charge air cooler placement and size. We've had to tweak intake system just because we had like some hot air. Like so once we got those things, you just have to be in it a little bit, be patient and work those things out. And it turns out like on your site you have a recommended kind of volume for a charge air cooler, and we were like just under that because it fit the vehicle a little bit better, and it turned out that it really wanted what you recommended.
So we were right.
Yeah, you were right.
Yeah, and so if you're gonna just put one of these engines in something that you're gonna kind of just daily drive and putz around and not really push it to its limits, you can kind of get away with some of the smaller, just off the shelf charge air coolers.
Right.
You can buy them off Summit for $200 and retain stock radiators and all that kind of stuff. But if you're wanting to tow or have a little bit higher performing vehicle or any of that stuff, again, that's kind of where I think the builders come in and have the ability to refine and tune their packages to fit the vehicles and offer a little bit better performance. Because I would say the engine is a little picky, especially when it comes to like cooling package and your charge air. We obviously in the engine calibration have limits of what it can withstand, and so we're going to throw check engine lights if you're too high or too low. But even if you're within the bounds, I mean, your performance will go up and down based on how well you kind of get it all fitted.
Another thing I noticed too is like it does a good job of warning you. Like if it's getting excessive intake air temperatures, it's gonna actually go into like it's not a limp mode, but
it basically is. There's a D rate. So yeah, depending on how far you go above our limits, there's different levels of that D rate. But so your first D rate is particularly like if you're overheating, we'll turn off the EGR just so that you're not adding all of that hot air back to the engine to try to help it cool itself off. But then the next level, whether it's for high charge temperatures or high coolant temperatures, we'll actually cut your torque, cut your power, and it's kind of for two reasons. It actually limits your engine speed, which ultimately limits your vehicle speed. It's just to try to cool the engine off by not running at full power and full torque, but it's also kind of an inconvenience to the driver to say like, hey, you need to pull over and fix something about this. Something's not right.
Just smart. I mean, it's you have to do that.
And we're trying to save your engine from completely killing itself.
That's right. So, on that Beta Scout, that trip, which was like a brand new Beta motor, we've never done that swap before. I think I drove that truck. We drove it to Flagstaff from Iowa. It's like 1,600 miles.
Went on an adventure after that.
Then I went to California. I went to Fred's place. Went back to Southern California. Drove back to Colorado. I think I put like 7,000 miles on it in one trip. And going through Utah, there's like these. It was May, so it was late May. It was getting warm. And in Utah, there's like these 80 mile an hour speed limits, and there's like some big grades. And I was just hammered down in fifth gear, just trying to pull them at 80 miles an hour. And it was like phone call to Steve or you. I can't remember. I'm like, why is this thing slowing down? So now I understand. Yeah, I understand. So what's the future for the program? And then, what's the future for the Repower program?
So right now, I guess the current status of the program, and I don't know, I think you're aware, and maybe some of your viewers. So we actually ran out of engines. A couple months ago. So that's, great for us. Our demand basically spiked in the last couple of months. And so where we had an inventory of engines, we sold them all out, and just with kind of the state of the world recently, we weren't able to replenish them as quickly as we would have liked. So we're getting those back in. The program is not over and done with. We're getting more engines. They're on their way here. And so we should have engines again available to the general public starting, I'm crossing my fingers for January. And hopefully we've actually kind of revamped our supply chain in the way we're holding our inventory and kitting the engines and bringing them here and building them and everything. So hopefully we don't run out ever again, because we're going to have a more steady supply and more consistent supply.
Where do they all ship out? Is it all out of Indiana?
We actually keep them down in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
So that's
they come like batches. What is a batch for Cummins?
So our first couple of batches we got them in batches of 100.
100. This is like coming on a train?
So the engines, the base engines themselves are actually built in China. So they're actually built, they come in on a boat, which is why it takes so long to get here, because boats are slow. And then I think they arrive, I don't know what port they come in, and then they're trucked to Tennessee. And so Tennessee is actually where we're kitting them now. They originally had been kitted here in Columbus.
Okay.
But that's part of our whole kind of optimizing our supply chain. We're moving that down to Tennessee. We've got a huge warehouse down there. So they'll be kitted and stored in Tennessee, and then they're shipped directly from there. So everyone always asked if they can come pick up their engine here in Columbus, and I said, no, they're not actually here.
Right.
So you can't do that. But yeah, so we've optimized a lot of that supply chain. That's been a lot of kind of work in the background.
For sure.
And so that's kind of hopefully all done now, and so we'll have that steady stream of engines going out to our customers starting in beginning of 2021. We do have, so we kind of talked a little bit about the new calibration that we came out with a couple years ago, and kind of that continuous improvement. So we have been working on another version of the calibration, nothing nearly as exciting as more torque. The torque is staying the same. But so we have been working on just some kind of little improvements, different features and stuff like that. So it's kind of been put on the back burner for a little while, but that will go out eventually. So I see that kind of going out in the next year or so. That'll just be an optional upgrade for anyone that already has an engine. You can certainly take the upgrade. If you don't want to mess with it, you don't have to.
Which you would just bring it to a local Cummins dealer?
So when we rolled out the last one, since it had some kind of really important improvements, we did offer the ability for people to either bring them into a local Cummins distributor or ship their ECMs back to us.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That gets expensive if you take it to a local distributor, because they end up charging like our program several $100s per engine just to update the computer. Right. So we haven't figured out exactly how you're going to get the new calibration yet. But if it's something that someone wants, we'll make that happen for them if they've already got the engine. And then obviously everything new, whatever date we release that calibration, will come with the new one.
Okay. What about aftermarket tuners? I know you're an engine, like you're thinking about warranty and everything, but are they? I know they're out there. I've not tried one, so what I'll say is, the 307 foot-pounds that we have in our calibration is currently the highest rating that Cummins has for the 2.8 platform. We did the work in our test cell to say what is the max that we are comfortable making, while still maintaining kind of all the mechanical limits that we as a company hold all of our engines to. So not just the 2.8, but it's the same across the board. There's certain, cylinder pressures and temperatures that we say, like, this is what we're comfortable with the engine doing for, long-term durability. And so that 307 foot-pounds, I mean, that's the max of what we are going to, kind of sign off on as a company. Anyone can add more fuel and air to the engine, and it's going to make more power. It's just up to you, right? Because you're definitely like, and I appreciate that, because I mean that's why I'm like,
it'll make more. I mean, definitely. Will it last 500,000 miles? Maybe more. I mean, it's hard to say, and maybe it will, and maybe it won't. And like I said, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that can, press some buttons and turn up the power and turn up the torque, and if that's what you're going for, that's great.
Have you interacted with people who have dialed them up?
I mean, I haven't really done a whole lot of work with like the tuners themselves or talk to the tuners themselves. I do know there's a bunch of customers out there running various tunes, and they seem happy with them. Like I said, it's just a question of the long-term durability.
Does it void the warranty?
Yes, it does.
And right? Like
there's
it all in the
there's
ECM?
kind of two ways. I mean, typically on the ECM, you can hide stuff like that. You can flash it back. I mean, we're not going to know automatically from the ECM. I mean, if the ECM still got the new tune in it, then we'll be able to see that in the computer. There's certainly ways to trick us, and I mean, we know that all happens. But there's also certain failure modes of the engine that, like, if you see one of these failure modes, we're assuming that you probably tuned it. If you have a failure mode that's completely unrelated, then obviously that's not something we're going to look at. But also, if you're posting all over Facebook that you're running a tune in your engine, we also watch that kind of stuff. And so, it does void your warranty, unfortunately.
And I found, again, unless it's like you just can't leave good enough, it's great. I don't see a reason to. That's why we won't really be, especially like we just did a Traveler, which is 118 inch wheelbase. It's like the biggest Scout there is. TR 4050 373s with 33s, and it was great. Like there's no reason. I mean, of course we all like more power.
But I mean, that's what we always tell people too. I mean, people, compare it to an LS or some of the other, crate engines out there, all the V8 gasoline stuff. And I mean, we don't make as much power, as those engines. And I always say, if you want an LS, I mean, don't do an R2.8, because that's not what you want. You want an LS. And so, I think the Cummins it's good for the people that want a Cummins and want that reliability and
efficiency.
Yeah.
Gets great mileage.
And like I said, I mean, you can turn them up a little bit. Probably is not going to, negatively impact anything. But if you're out there just to, turn them up crazy horsepower and torque, I guess they're not the 5.9. We'll say that. So, they're not going to be making 1,000 horsepower. Right. They're not going to be doing that. So.
Funny.
Getting LS.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if that's, again, and that's what I think is beautiful about it. It's not like an either or, it's a both and. Like, what do you want to use it for? Like, what is your mission statement? I was just with a Ford engineer who was talking about just approaching a project. Like, you have to have a mission statement. And it's like,
what's your goals for
your goals?
What do you want to use it for?
That's right. And I think the R2.8, certainly what I've heard, I was just talking to Stuart about his R2.8, and he just was in Moab, and he's like, he has had lots of engines and LSs, everything. And he was just saying the R2.8 with the 8 HP70 is like the best off-road engine he's ever, like the low end grunt, just how cool it runs. Like, he was just raving about it. So good job. As far as what else is new for the program, any other crate motors coming out, or sticking with the R2.8 for a while?
For now, it's just the R2.8, unfortunately. With all we're on kind of a reduced workforce, reduced budget now. So there's not a whole lot of resources out there to be releasing anything new. There's a lot of changes just in the EPA and CARB and all the emissions regulations, and while most of that is on the first fit side, on the OEM side, that does trickle down to the aftermarket, and so we need to just kind of be conscious of that and what our emissions group within Cummins is comfortable with us doing and releasing. And so we've kind of played around with different platform ideas, and so ultimately the whole idea of the program was to have multiple offerings. And so I
was supposed to do a 5.0 in my Suburban.
I know, and it would be so cool. But so I think long term, it is still my goal and kind of the program's goal to release some other engine platforms out there. Sure. But there's I can't say like, hey, a year from now, like there'll be something.
No, it's good wisdom to take it slow.
Yeah.
Okay, we mentioned hydrogen before, and we'll kind of close on this. So I have a friend who just bought one of our Scouts, and it's going to Germany. And he was just saying how, like, it's crazy in Germany, like, diesels are being banned from a lot of cities. Like, so it's like, he said it was, and this is secondhand. So you emissions experts from Germany, don't quote me. But he was saying it's like as silly as like, you can't drive down this road if you have a diesel engine. So go 5 miles around, because we're trying to save the environment.
But you're going to make more emissions driving 5 miles around.
Exactly. So, but is there the future for diesel engines? I don't know. I take that and go like, oh, typically it's like Europe goes like the rest of but Europe's been diesel heavy. So I don't know if that's just a Germany thing, or like you hear Gavin Newsom just said like by 2035 there'll be no fossil fuel vehicles sold in California. So you mentioned Cummins playing with this hydrogen stuff. Like, what is I know you can't really speak for Cummins, a huge company, but what is like the atmosphere of diesel engines in the future?
So I think you're going to struggle moving away from diesel for stuff like long haul trucking and all of that for a long time, because the infrastructure is not there for some of these alternative fuels. The range isn't there.
Or electric.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. If you have to recharge your semi-truck's batteries for 2 days, in order to continue driving, or your range is only a couple 100 miles, like that's not ever going to work. I think the heart is in the right place, when trying to reduce emissions, but I think you also have to be realistic of what our economy needs and what our country needs. And so I think for kind of regional truck or urban truck, I think some of the electric and the hybrid, they're good technologies, and definitely implement that when you're only running around a city, or your route is very specific, and you can fill up here and fill up here. So I think that kind of stuff is a kind of a good stepping point towards a cleaner alternative energy future. But I don't think diesel engines are going anywhere anytime soon, personally. I think Cummins as a company, we are trying to diversify into some of these alternative fuels, because obviously Europe and the rest of the world is going that way. And so we want to protect our market share, and if people need hybrids, then that's what we're going to give them. So we've invested in a lot of battery technology. We've invested in a lot of hybrid technology. Hydrogen is kind of the new one now that we're trying to get into hydrogen fuel cells, or we are into hydrogen fuel cells. And so I think kind of interspersing that into our diesel engine offerings and seeing how you can kind of combine some of those technologies, like I think is what we should be focusing on, or what we are focusing on, to offer diesel hybrids and offer some of these kind of combined technologies to reduce emissions and increase range. And
I think that's where it's at too. Because what's funny is like for the last 5 years they've been saying like combustion engines are going away, but they've never been better. Like diesel engines are the best they've ever been. Gas engines are the best they've ever been. Electric is coming along, and I think you're right. I think what you'll see is in cities, this kind of closed loop system
that can support that kind of technology.
Right, but it will be exciting to see. I think hybrid's where it's at, because there's some great benefits to electric assist, I think.
Yeah, I mean you can. Yeah, I mean the performance of electric motors can really complement the range of a diesel engine, either used as direct drive or as a generator. So I think that's like kind of cool technology that we can start incorporating into vehicles. And I know back when I was doing my internships and all the alternative energy stuff, we were doing a study, and something that actually Jay Leno said kind of like stuck out to me. And I mean I'm going to totally butcher the quote at this point, but the idea was let's embrace kind of that new, whether it's electric or hydrogen or whatever, like if we can embrace that on your daily driver or your in industry, that can help save some of our cool old internal combustion engines, save the fossil fuels for those, save the kind of emissions that we're willing to put out, save it for that cool old stuff, and kind of make your compromise on the daily driver that you drive to work every day, or your long haul trucks. And so I thought that was kind of neat. That is kind of cool, because it also speaks to kind of what we're doing here with the Repower program, like save those old vehicles, maybe make them a little cleaner with the R2.8,
for sure,
but
100%.
Kind of retain how cool they are by compromising elsewhere in your life to make yourself a little cleaner. So I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective. That's
awesome. Well, as someone who has invested a lot of their life in preserving old vehicles, I thank you and Cummins for your work in the R2.8 program. Because keeping these old platforms on the road is like, we need companies like you to innovate and do your thing. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being on the show, and we'll hopefully see this thing out and about.
Yeah.
Got to get out and have you taken it to like off-roading it like a Moab?
I wouldn't take it in Moab. I don't think I can handle that from a vehicle platform. But we did take it on the Cummins cruise. So on Cummins cruise, this last one we did, we finished it at midnight. We left on Cummins cruise the next morning at 9 a.m. We did do a little bit of off-roading. I mean, very mild on that trip. Pretty sure my shock fell off at one point because I forgot to tighten those up. So we had some little mishaps. But I mean, it's fun to drive off-road, but it's more of a mall crawler, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, but like a 1-year-old, got to get Henry in there and rip it around.
Yeah, so his car seat goes in there every once in a while.
Good. All right, well, Brittany, thanks again. And thanks for joining us and listening in. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Yep, sounds good.